I think if there's one compliment I would say to this developer is that they're a master of emotional manipulation. Hey everyone, welcome to my Shmup playthrough, my ShmupChallenge playthrough of the indie shmup Blue Revolver by Stellar Circle. And, well, we'll talk about why it's a ShmupChallenge here in a second, but basically this is my 1 credit clear of Blue Revolver in hyper mode. And this game wasn't actually my choice to play. That's why I call it ShmupChallenge, because, you know, with us being kind of collectively locked down here with the pandemic and everything, I realized I should probably find a shmup to play and challenge myself. But usually what I end up doing is, it's a very solitary kind of genre to begin with, and usually what I end up doing is just going back to the ones I like to go back to over and over again. And I thought to myself, it may be kind of fun to just reach out to somebody else in the community, in the shmup community, and kind of issue a challenge or request a challenge. So I issued a challenge to a fellow who goes by the name of Mark MSX. I don't know his full name, but he's a really good dude. He has a really active and well-known in the community YouTube channel and website called the Electric Underground, where he covers all this stuff. Talks a lot about shmups and scoring, and basically he's just trying to grow the genre, the interest in the genre in the community. So yeah, he's a really good guy, and I really dig his enthusiasm. So I thought maybe he'll actually be cool with accepting the challenge, and he did. I challenged him to a pretty modest request to do a 1 credit clear of the cave shmup Espluda, or a 20 million plus score, which I guess is pretty doable even if you don't clear the game. And in return, he challenged me to get a 1 credit clear of Blue Revolver in hyper mode, which is basically like the normal mode, I think, on the difficulty spectrum. There is actually the normal difficulty, which I think is easy mode. In my first playthrough, I completed it on one credit. And hyper mode, which is like the mid mode, it's pretty. I would say it's pretty easy. It's one of the easier on the bullet hell scale of shooters. I guess there's been kind of a trend in recent, not even just recent, but maybe in the last decade, of sort of opening up these kinds of games to more average gamers. And that doesn't mean that the games are super easy to the point where the average gamer can clear it easily, but rather it's doable. They can practice it for, maybe if you're an average player, maybe if you practiced it for a couple weeks or a week on and off. It took me only a couple days. By a few playthroughs, maybe the 4th playthrough, I was consistently getting to the end boss and dying really stupidly. So it took me a little longer than I planned to get this challenge completed. But I think actually I played also the parallel mode, which is like the equivalent of the hard mode, and it's not too different. It's actually not a lot harder. It's almost exactly the same, except the way that this works is it's rank heavy, which means that as the game's rank goes up, and I think there's about 5 levels of rank, and you increase that with basically how much you're scoring, how much you're observing scoring, which I'm not observing much, if at all, really only incidentally here and there do I actually care to do it, because I'm really thinking mainly of just clearing the game. And I'll talk a little bit about the scoring system later, because actually it's really interesting. I think I'll continue playing it to try to improve my score and play seriously, which I'll pretty much exclusively do in parallel mode, the hard mode, so-called. But actually, in this sort of hyper normal mode, this mid mode, the rank sort of varies from 1 to 5, and if you die, you drop a rank. So it's a little easier in that respect, whereas the hard mode, it just sticks in the rank 5 throughout the whole game, which is, you know, to my mind, the game only gets sort of generally a little harder in the 4th and 5th stage, as I died stupidly right there. And in those stages, you're pretty much going to be in 4th or 5th rank for the most of it, unless you die, which of course makes it a lot easier. So I was able to get to the last stage in parallel mode when I first actually only played it once. So I think it's doable, and I guess there's a last boss that's not in the mid-tier hyper mode that I'm playing here. But yeah, I think it's kind of on par with an average old school arcade shmup difficulty if you play it on the harder mode. And the scoring system, it's really interesting. Normally when I'm trying to get it clear, I don't really care about the scoring at all, or I'll maybe only try to like get a little bit of an inkling of it. But basically the way that the scoring system works is you get this here in the left-hand side of the screen, you get 8 hits. So it maxes out when you chain 8 hits, and then it kind of see that meter goes down. If you keep the chain up, you try to cash in on that by using a special shot, which you can kind of see here, although the one I chose is kind of hard to see. It's a cluster bomb, and so when the cluster bomb kills or whatever special weapon you're using, there's others, when it hits the target enemy or a group of enemies, you cash in on that chain and you get like a times 64 multiplier, and that's basically how you score. And there's also, in larger enemies, they have different sections to the enemies that you try to basically destroy all the sections separately, and then the final kill, usually in the middle of the mid-boss or larger enemy, you then cash in on a break, they call it, which is worth a lot of points. So in this playthrough, I didn't pay attention to scoring at all, and I got about, I think, 40 million. And I just saw a super play on YouTube of somebody playing parallel mode and getting, I think, 150 million. So that shows you the range of difference that you can expect from playing for score and not playing for score at all. I think it's pretty flexible, and I don't know, it's just really fun when you cash in. It's got a really satisfying loop. So I guess I'm going to speak a little bit now from a developer's perspective, because I'm in this space, and sometimes when I'm playing indie games, I play them not only just as a gamer and somebody to enjoy the game, but also kind of picking it apart and seeing what I like or dislike about how a game was developed. And super impressed with Blue Revolver. I mean, just backing up a bit, this is basically the exact game I wanted. I had no idea. So definitely a big shout out to Mark for suggesting this. I thought he was going to suggest to me some sort of, he's going to phone it in with like an old standard cave, Dodon Patchy or something. And I was kind of hoping that wouldn't be the case, but I was cool with it if it was, and I was even using it as a potential excuse to play a game that maybe I would have not played or avoided, or chances are it would have probably been a game I hadn't played much of before. But I didn't anticipate that he would throw me this game. So I went right out and bought it right away. I didn't even hesitate, because I'd heard about it over the years. It came out in 2016, so like usual, I'm late to the party. I guess my philosophy on that, and the reason why I'm often late to indie shmups or a lot of indie games, well, especially indie shmups, is because I guess my philosophy is like, we have decades and decades of really excellent shmups that were developed for back in the arcade generation, the 90s, as well as console. And I just feel like, no matter how long I live, I'll never have a chance to go through all of them. So I feel like if I'm going to play a new one, or a new game for me, may as well go to the back catalog and pull out something that's a guaranteed hit. Then, put up my money. I mean, this game is extremely modestly priced. It was only, I think, $17. And it's worth a lot more than that in my mind. But, if you don't know what you're getting, it's often hard to justify. And I know I saw it over the years. A lot of people recommended it, but I guess I stubbornly kind of, I think I just saw the video, and then I kind of concluded, it's another sort of Dodonpachi light or something, and I just didn't see like the details and the differences in the details. And that's my main compliment to this developer and this game, is when you first start playing it, you realize that there's just all these levels of details that are observed. The best way I'd summarize it is, with a lot of developers, you know, it's hard work developing. There's so many things to think about, and you're always putting out fires, and I totally understand. As a matter of fact, you know, I have a big vision of my own, and sometimes I wonder what am I gonna have to drop in order to get this thing done before I'm old and gray. So I understand that the challenges, and I don't really begrudge it when a developer wants to implement things, but you know, for whatever reason can't. But sometimes there is just lazy development. There's just like, you know, extremely good looking graphics and, you know, kind of generic gameplay that is sort of tried and true, and then that's it. They just stop right there. They don't try to push the envelope a little bit and engage the player in a new and interesting way. I think for this game, there's a lot of blending of different. I can pick out a lot of different aspects from different shmups that I've played. So it kind of synthesizes a lot of those elements really well. But I think what it does really, really well, the best way I can summarize what they do well and their attention to detail, is everything is placed for a reason. You know, in a lot of these kind of games, you get the feeling like the developer, it's almost like an afterthought where they put the enemies and what kind of bullet patterns they implement. But in this one, you get a real sense that they're sitting there playing the game, realizing that, oh, okay, the player is probably going to want to go into this direction, so let's counter that movement with shots from another direction. But instead of just, in a cheap sort of way, trapping the player endlessly and making the player feel like they always have to bomb and have their you know, finger, like a itchy trigger finger on the bomb button, there's always a way out. And it's just so superbly done that the game is always keeping up a pace. So even though it's not really super difficult in any one place, it's constantly keeping your attention at its absolute height. Because a small, you know, in this playthrough, it'll look like, in a lot of ways, it'll look like, you know, extremely easy, and that's partly due with the ship placement, where I'm putting my ship, and that I'm shooting things, you know, before they can spawn a lot of bullets and, you know, put me in a tough situation. So there's a little bit of memorization, and with this directed shot, which I really like, I'm able to maximize being able to place my ship while at the same time taking advantage of my shot direction. And also that's why I like the special weapon, which I don't know if it's the best. It's probably not the best weapon for scoring, but I think it's a really good weapon choice for getting 1 credit clear, because it's extremely powerful. It's very efficient. You see, you gain meter by picking up those little capsules for the special weapon, and so it's very efficient on meter. And I guess the main disadvantage of it is that you have to be particularly accurate, and there's most of the enemies in this game have large hitboxes, so you don't really have to worry about accuracy, but especially some bosses are quite small, and you'll probably see in the final boss, I'll just flat out miss with a special shot so many times. I think I just got nervous and just messed with my timing. But yeah, you have to be a little bit more accurate in some cases, but I would definitely advocate that as a good go-to to clear the game. But back to the developer, it really kind of made me think when I develop my game or games to really pay a special attention to where I place obstacles, enemies, patterns. Because I think if there's one compliment I would say to this developer, is that they're a master of emotional manipulation. And I mean that in a good way, because there's so many times when you just think that, oh, the game's gonna kind of let up, and before you know it, the music starts pumping and you're in the next wave, and at first you're not ready for it, but once you get used to it, it's quite manageable. And that's the other thing, is that all of these kind of games, I was saying a little earlier that there's been a trend in recent years, or like again in the last 10, maybe 15 years, to open this up to more players and not become so, you know, impenetrable, you know, yeah. So historically, these games, they've been known for being super hard and kind of for a small set of hardcore players in the arcade scene, you know, mostly in the Japan scene. And, you know, it's cool and all. Some of those games are really hard, and I played some of those, and I understand the appeal, but it's not really that great to have this game that only maybe 5 people on the planet care about enough to really get good at it, or be able to even beat the game in some cases on one credit. So in recent years, the trend I find has been to not make the game so immediately impenetrable, but to make it, you know, especially for somebody who's just new to this genre, you know, you want them to be hooked in and see the appeal. And the worst way to get that is by making them feel like it's just a ridiculous challenge, to the point where, you know, you'd have to have some sort of high-level, high-functioning autism to be good at, you know. So, you know, much in that new trend, this game is definitely a lot more accessible right off the bat. But on the flip side of that, it has a deep scoring that ramps up the difficulty. So if you want to score properly, and if you want to play for score, you can't avoid the natural difficulty. And this creates a natural ramping of the player's everything, interest, skills, constantly being challenged. You know, you can play for fun to just clear the game, to dodge bullets to begin with, and then naturally move into scoring, and then eventually mastery. This has been a trend I've been really enjoying in recent years. Some of my favorite games, I didn't think they would be my favorite, or some of the ones that you clear the fastest, I guess, that comes to mind, are the Decimals series. Definitely a lot of recent indie shmups. When it comes to indie shmups, I really haven't played too many. Probably the one I played the most before this one, although I haven't played that much yet, but I anticipate I will, has been probably Jamestown, and mainly because just the presentation is so good on it. You know, it's also has some really strong, you know, really fun game loop, strong gameplay, but to me, the presentation on that is what kept me coming back to it. But I never really got too serious about it, probably because the scoring to me feels a little thin. But in regards to the presentation, it was one of the things I mentioned earlier, that I was just sort of stubborn about this and didn't pick it up sooner, despite hearing lots of positive recommendations. The visuals didn't really say anything to me. But then when I started playing it, I started realizing, oh, it has its own unique visual style that I really appreciate. And, you know, like any good indie game made in the last, whatever, 10, 15 years, you can't really tell when it's been made. You don't know. It's not like, oh, this looks like a game from this era. You know, this game could have come out yesterday, could have come out 15 years ago, and it's timeless. It's classic, but it's also got its own kind of look to it, which I really, really think is awesome. Yeah, there's no way I was going to dodge that. It's funny, when you watch the replay, there's some sections where you think, why did I even try to dodge that? It was so stupid, and I ended up dodging it fine. And then there's other places where I missed stupidly, and I thought, well, that was dumb. But I guess that's how it goes usually. I think the biggest challenge when playing, especially when you're doing a challenge that you're kind of, you know, aware of. Sometimes I play just for fun, and before I know it, I'm actually at the last boss and, you know, maybe going to get a clear. But in this case, I was kind of self-conscious of it, because I was challenging myself. I didn't want to do this thing where I really get into a game, play it a fair amount, and then drop it for months. And I guess I have to confess that is a very common trend with me. So I really just wanted to get the clear pretty much right away. And that resulted in me just having more nerves than usual, which I think you'll probably see on the last boss, which is not a very difficult, you know, especially I think I bombed on the first pattern, which wasn't really a difficult pattern. I just sort of blanked out, just kind of lost tracking of the bullets. And unfortunately, it's probably my shortcoming when playing. My nerves get the best of me sometimes. Yeah, there. I just let the special shot go. I think I missed twice, and then got nervous, so I all of a sudden cornered myself stupidly. Realized I spent my special meter and didn't get anything for it. But then probably realized I have 3 lives, so not to worry about it. I think I got to the boss maybe in the last 4 play sessions, and I just blew it stupidly. One time my dog started barking on the street level, and I just angrily paused the game, and I never got back into my groove. Just little distractions, and this time I just somehow got in the zone, and I guess I didn't care anymore. I guess I was just tired of getting to the last boss and thinking it mattered, because it didn't really matter. I knew I was going to keep playing, and just a matter of time at this point. Not that difficult of a pattern. I think I'm rank, that orange meter at the top there I guess is saying I'm rank 3 or 4 maybe. I think I'm 4. I don't know. Doesn't seem that, although that was a fortuitous bounce there. Doesn't seem too difficult otherwise. Anyways, yeah, so I'll also, you know, big thanks to Mark for pointing this out. And Mark and I don't really know each other, but he follows me on Twitter, I follow him, and I just really appreciate what he's been doing, trying to expose more people to this genre, which I guess for him and for a lot of people, it's kind of strange to see it stuck in this sort of niche category, which I guess it'll probably always be to some degree, but we live in the age where, you know, competitive gaming is so huge with, you know, people doing speed runs all the time and Twitch streaming, and you know, in esports and that kind of thing. So I don't know, a lot of people are very attuned to challenge-based gaming, you know, competitive gaming, and to me this genre is such a pure form of that. I don't know why it's kind of having difficulty sometimes gaining more interest. So I really appreciate what Mark's trying to do, and I think it's just a natural passion of his, and that comes through definitely with his content. So you should definitely check out his, I'd highly recommend you check out his, well, I guess he has a bunch of things. He has his YouTube channel, Electric Underground, a website where I guess he has articles and lots of videos with high scores, and his Patreon. So yeah, anyways, that was my playthrough of Blue Revolver, and thanks again to Mark, and I guess I'm going to pass along the suggestion to keep this hashtag ShmupChallenge alive by nominating somebody and then ask them for a counter nomination, or to pass along to somebody else. All right, thanks for watching.